My name is Javier, I'm 27, and Christmas Eve 2023 was supposed to be the first normal family gathering in years. At least, that's what I told myself while looking in the mirror, adjusting the collar of a shirt I hadn't worn since my university graduation. It still fit somehow. I hadn't seen most of my relatives in over a year, not since my uncle Gregorio's retirement party, where my mother, Diana, got embarrassingly drunk and tried convincing everyone I was a successful financial advisor in Madrid. For the record, I was. I was still in the city, living in a rented shoebox and juggling two jobs to stay afloat after getting laid off. The only reason I was going to this dinner was because my Aunt Valeria, my mom's older sister, called me personally and insisted I come. And when Aunt Val asks you something, you don't say no. She was the only one in the family who never looked down on me, who remembered my birthday without Facebook reminders, and who once whispered to me during my cousin's wedding, "You were never a failure, you were just outnumbered." So I showed up. I parked my beat-up car 2 streets away so no one would see it sputter, fixed my hair in the reflection of a stranger's SUV, and walked into the house like I belonged there. The place was huge, bigger than I remembered. Aunt Val's house was always warm and classy, the kind of place with a real fireplace and people drinking wine from tall, stemless glasses. The air smelled of rosemary, roast turkey, and something else I couldn't quite place at first. I didn't see my mother right away, which was a relief. I wasn't ready for her usual remarks about how tired I looked or how I should smile more. Instead, my cousin Amanda greeted me, too busy taking selfies with her boyfriend to notice me, followed by Uncle Gregorio, who gave me a curt handshake like we were business associates, not family. The dining table was massive, adorned with gold-rimmed plates and enough food to feed a small village. I found a seat near the end, squeezed between a chair reserved for the kids and a crystal bowl of candied fruit no one would touch. I was reaching for a roll when Aunt Val's voice cut through the chatter like a knife through butter. "So, Javier," she said, setting her wine glass down with a soft clink, "how's the apartment I bought you last year?" The room went silent. I froze, hands still hovering over the breadbasket. I turned to her, blinking like she'd spoken a foreign language. "What apartment?" I asked, not even trying to hide the confusion in my voice. Her smile faltered for a second, just a second, but it was enough to shift the room's atmosphere. Gaze flicked to my mother, sitting across from her, cheeks already flushed from wine. Mom's hand jerked, her glass tipping too fast. Merlot spilled down her blouse. She cursed under her breath, grabbed a napkin, and dabbed furiously, eyes fixed on the table. "Diana," Aunt Val said, her voice suddenly colder. Mom didn't respond at first, just shook her head and muttered something about clumsy hands. But then Val leaned forward slightly and said, louder this time, "You never told him, did you?" The silence broke, but not how I expected. Grandma coughed. Amanda let out a nervous giggle, the kind someone makes in a horror movie right before the lights go out. My stomach twisted. Slowly, I set the roll down and sat back, arms crossed. "Tell me what?" I asked, staring straight at my mother. She looked at the napkin like it held the answers to an exam she'd never studied for. "It was supposed to be private," she mumbled, not meeting anyone's eyes. "A family matter." "Aunt Val bought me an apartment," I asked again, louder this time. "It's true," Val nodded slowly. "Yes, I bought it for you last fall after you lost your job. I sent the down payment directly, even covered a year's worth of HOA fees up front. Diana said you moved in." My lungs forgot how to work. My face must have gone pale because Amanda finally looked up from her phone. Uncle Gregorio muttered something under his breath. I looked at my mother, waiting, needing her to say it wasn't true, that it was a mistake, a mix-up. Instead, she slammed the napkin on the table and snapped, "Do you have any idea how ungrateful you sound right now?" "What?" I asked, voice cracking from shock. "You took an apartment meant for me and never told me. You think life that simple." She hissed, "You don't just get handouts, Javier. You needed to learn responsibility to stand on your own." I blinked. "So your solution was to lie to your own sister, to steal from me?" Her face hardened. "We used the money for your brother." Of course, it was about Adrian, my younger brother, the golden child who crashed his third car this year and somehow still had his tuition covered. The one who'd never worked a day in his life but got a new MacBook every Christmas. I clenched my jaw. "What do you mean, use the money?" I asked, though I already had a sickening feeling I knew. My mother waved her hand like she was swatting a fly. Adrian was going through a rough patch. He needed help to get back on his feet. He deserved a safe place to live, too. "You gave him my apartment," I said flat. "It wasn't yours yet," she snapped. The room was dead silent now. All eyes were on us. Aunt Val sat still, her wine forgot. I could hear someone's fork clink against a plate at the far end of the table, then stop. No one spoke. "So what?" I asked, voice low but sharp. "You were just going to keep lying, pretend it never happened?" My mother leaned back, crossing her arms like a teenager caught in a lie. "You wouldn't have appreciated it. You squander opportunities." I wanted to scream. Instead, I turned to Aunt Val. "Can you tell me where this apartment is?" She blinked, then stood slowly. Yes, I have the paperwork. I never heard from you after the transfer, but I trusted your mother when she said you settled in. Mom let out a sharp, hollow laugh. This is ridiculous. We're airing this over turkey and potatoes. You aired it, I said, standing. When you lied for over a year. My hands were shaking, but I kept them clenched at my sides. Aunt Val looked livid. My mother was fuming. My brother Adrian wasn't even at the table, upstairs, no doubt, gaming or streaming on the giant TV probably bought with money carved out of the life I was supposed to have. I want to see the place, I said quietly. Tonight. My mother opened her mouth to argue, but Val cut her off. I'll take you. Mom's chair scraped as she stood abruptly. You're not taking him there. Val didn't flinch. You can't stop me. I'm his mother. You stopped acting like his mother when you stole from him. I didn't know what stunned me more, Val's words or the way Mom visibly recoiled like she'd been slapped. The whole room held its breath, and then the yelling started. Not from me, not even from Val, it came from the stairs. You promised they'd never find out. It was Adrian. His voice was raw with panic, guilt, and chaos. I turned slowly and locked eyes with my brother at the top of the stairs, his face pale, jaw slack, like a kid caught stealing cookies but broadcast on national TV instead. Everything started unraveling from there. Adrian froze on the stairs, hand gripping the railing like it was the only thing keeping him from falling. His usual smug confidence, the look he wore at every family gathering while making snide remarks about my job, my car, my haircut, was gone. He looked like a man facing a truth he couldn't dodge. You promised, Mom, he repeated, quieter, voice trembling. Aunt Val turned to him, eyes narrow and sharp. Promised what, Adrian? My mother's mouth opened, but no words came out. She looked between him and me like a cornered animal, and for the first time I saw it not just guilt but fear. I didn't know what else to do, she said finally, voice shaking. You have to understand, he was in trouble, serious trouble. Val's voice was ice. What kind of trouble? Adrian took a shaky breath. Debts. That single word hit the room like thunder. I stepped forward. What do you mean debts? You told me last year you got a bonus and were looking at downtown apartments. That was before things went bad, he muttered, eyes on the floor. I got into crypto. Some guys convinced me it was a sure investment. I borrowed money from Mom's account, just short term, but it crashed and I couldn't cover it. My heart pounded. So you stole the apartment meant for me to cover your crypto debts, my mother flinched. It wasn't just that. Then what else? He said it was an investment, Adrian cut in, that the apartment would be in his name for a year or two, then he'd transfer it to me. To you, I barked. I didn't know it was originally for you, he said quickly, hands raised. She told me Val gave it to her to use as she saw fit. That's not true, Val snapped. I told her explicitly it was a gift to help Javier get back on his feet. Not her, not you. My mother stood, knocking over her chair. Her voice was shrill, desperate. Do you have any idea what it's like to watch your youngest son fall apart in front of you? To see him scared and ashamed and know you're the only one who can help? You were supposed to help me, I said, voice low and bitter. You knew I was drowning. You knew I was behind on rent, living in that dump, and you gave my apartment to Adrian and lied about it for a whole year. She didn't respond. She didn't have to. Her silence said everything. You lied to Val, I added, your own sister. I had to, Javier, she said, tears in her eyes. If she knew Adrian was gambling with money he didn't have, it would have destroyed him. She always favored you anyway. I had to do what was best for my son. I stared, stunned. I'm your son, I said, voice shaking. You were fine, she said quickly. You've always been so independent. You figure things out. I knew you. Survive. You knew I wouldn't make a fuss, I said slowly. I wouldn't ask questions. I'd just swallow it and move on. That's why you picked me. The table was still full, but no one was eating. Someone's fork slipped to the floor with a soft clink. Grandma stared wide-eyed, lips tight. Amanda had stopped recording and looked genuinely horrified. Uncle Gregorio seemed to want to vanish into his wine glass. Val took a long, controlled breath. You forged my signature on documents, didn't you? My mother didn't answer. I'm not a fool, Diana, Val continued. I sent the money to a closing company, not you. You must have intercepted it, redirected the paperwork. That's the only way Javier wouldn't have heard from anyone. Adrian's face went gray. Wait, you forged legal documents. Don't act like you didn't benefit, I snapped. You knew something was off and didn't care. Val pulled out her phone. I want the address. I'm calling my lawyer right now. Please, Val, Mom whispered. This was never supposed to go this far. It's going much further, Val said. You messed with the wrong person's name, Diana. I stayed quiet for years when you insulted me behind my back and made passive-aggressive comments about my career. But this, you stole from your own son and dragged my name into it. Adrian's footsteps echoed as he bolted up the stairs. I didn't follow. I was done chasing ghosts. Javier, Val said softly. I'll fix this. I nodded, but I wasn't sure what fixed looked like. The rage in my chest burned so fiercely I felt numb. I kept thinking of all the nights I spent working late, rationing groceries, walking home because I couldn't afford gas, while a warm, safe place was waiting for me, one I didn't even know existed. And now I had questions and no one I could trust to answer them without more lies. Then my mother finally looked at me, eyes bloodshot and pleading. I didn't mean to hurt you, she said quietly. You didn't mean for me to find out, I replied. I turned to Val and said, let's go, I want to see it. Without a word, she grabbed her coat and purse, her heels clicking on the hardwood. I didn't look back as we walked out, but just before I stepped into the street, I heard my mother's voice, barely a whisper, say something I'll never forget. If he takes that apartment, Adrian's life will fall apart. I didn't hesitate. Then he'll finally know what it feels like. The front door closed behind us, cutting off whatever came next. That was just the beginning. Val's car was quiet as we drove away. The driveway shrank in the rearview mirror like a fading memory I didn't want to revisit. The heater hummed softly, and neither of us spoke for a while. I stared out the window, watching neat rows of houses blur by, lights glowing behind curtains, families gathered around tables. Christmas Eve. For most, it meant warmth, gratitude, second helpings, and cozy comfort. For me, it had become the night everything I thought I knew about my family shattered. Javier, Val said finally, her voice soft but firm. I'm sorry, I had no idea. I nodded but didn't know how to respond. Part of me wanted to rage, to ask how she didn't see the signs, but the truth was she'd been lied to just like me. Mom had manipulated us both. For what? To keep Adrian comfortable, to prop up the fantasy of his innocence. She told me you were settling in and didn't want to make a big deal about it, Val continued. She even said you didn't want me to know where it was because you were embarrassed. I let out a short, bitter laugh. That sounds like her. She always knew how to spin a story. Val's hands tightened on the wheel. When we were kids, she could get away with anything. But this, she shook her head. This is another level. We turned onto a quieter street, older buildings lining the sidewalk. There was a charm to the area, tall trees arching over the road, bare branches lit by scattered streetlights. A dog barked in the distance. A couple walked hand in hand, bundled in scarves. Here, Val said, slowing to a stop in front of a 3-story brick building. It looked clean, well-kept, the kind of place where people politely nod to neighbors and leave shoes outside their doors. You're kidding, I murmured. This is it, she nodded. Third-floor corner unit, gets afternoon sun. I toured it myself before sending the payment. It was supposed to be a fresh start for you. We sat in silence, staring at the dark windows. I wondered which one Adrian had claimed as his. What room had my name on it before it was erased from the plan? Want to go up? She asked softly. I hesitated. Part of me desperately wanted to, but another part, the hurt, exhausted part, wasn't ready to see it yet. I didn't want to walk into a life I was never allowed to have, not when I could still feel the sting of its theft. Not tonight, I said quietly. Not while he's still living there, she nodded. That's fair, I'll get the keys. We drove back, and as we did, she filled me in on the details I'd missed. Emails, transfer forms, confirmation letters Mom must have intercepted or redirected. It painted a clearer picture. My mother hadn't just lied, she'd orchestrated it carefully, deliberately. Every lie stacked on the last, woven into a believable narrative she could sell to both sides. She signed your name on the mortgage addendum, Val said as we pulled into her garage. No question, and added Adrian as the occupant. My stomach churned. That's illegal. She parked and turned to me. Not without your consent, especially since I specified the gift was for you. The implication hung in the air. There were consequences for what Mom had done, real consequences, and suddenly the path forward was clear. There were documents to gather, lawyers to call, decisions to make. I could take this to court. I could expose every lie, every signature, every stolen word. But more than that, I could take back what was mine. That night, lying on the pull-out couch in Val's guest room, I stared at the ceiling, thoughts spinning like tires in mud. I replayed Mom's justifications, Adrian's panic, the way my name was erased from my own future without a second thought. I kept thinking about the apartment, what it would have meant to walk into a place and know it was mine. Hanging my coat on a hook, I'd installed myself, sleeping in a bed that didn't creak every time I turned, inviting people over without feeling ashamed. I thought of Adrian living there now, probably texting about the family drama like it was a soap opera. Did he even grasp what he'd taken from me? Probably not. He never had to. The next morning, the smell of coffee and fresh cinnamon rolls woke me. Val was at the table, papers spread out like a battle map. Good morning, she said, handing me a mug. Hope you're ready. We've got work to do. I rubbed my eyes and sat. You're serious about this? Her eyes didn't waver. Your mother made a mistake and she's going to face the consequences. But more importantly, you're going to reclaim what was meant for you. There was something fierce in her voice, staley, like she'd been waiting for an excuse to stop tolerating Diana's games. Now she had it. We went through everything, emails she'd sent to my mother, transfer receipts, property tax statements. There it was in black and white, my name erased, my mother's signature where mine should have been, Adrian's name slipped in like a thief in the night. But as we pieced it together, something else emerged, a pattern, other inconsistencies, accounts where things didn't quite add up. Then Val paused, studying a bank statement she'd printed. Javier, did you know your grandmother left you a savings bond in her will? Heart skipped. No, I didn't even know she had a will. She did, Val said, frowning. and she left something for both you and Adrian, equal amounts, but according to the records, only Adrian's was cashed out. I stared. What? Her eyes narrowed. It matured last year and was tied to your ID number, but someone claimed it. My blood ran cold. You think Mom forged that too? She didn't answer because she didn't need to. In that moment, I realized the apartment was just the beginning. I wish I could say I was shocked, but I was. Not anymore. By the time Val uncovered the stolen savings bond, I'd crossed an invisible line. The old version of me, the one who gave the benefit of the doubt, who let things slide to keep the peace, was gone, replaced by someone who'd finally woken up to the truth. I'd spent most of my life as the quiet son, the forgiving brother, the invisible man in my own family story, and my mother had erased me from the plot with a smile. Over the next week, I stayed at Val's while we gathered every document, receipt, and shred of evidence we could find. She had a good lawyer, an old friend she'd mentored fresh out of law school, named Enrique. He didn't mince words. She committed fraud, he said bluntly after reviewing the documents. Forgery, embezzlement, identity theft. Depending on how far you want to take this, Javier, she could face real consequences. Real consequences. The words echoed in my ears for days. I didn't want to destroy her. I didn't want to destroy anyone. But I couldn't keep pretending what she did could be swept under the rug, that it was just a family matter to be fixed with a stew and awkward apologies. She stole from me, my home, the one financial gift I was ever given, and handed it to my brother like it was hers to redistribute, so I gave Enrique the green light. He filed a cease and desist order against both my mother and Adrian, ordering them to vacate the apartment within 30 days. It included the original transfer deed Val had prepared in my name, along with notarized proof that her funds were specifically meant for me. Enrique also requested a formal audit of the savings bond transaction. The paper trail showed Mom had used my ID to claim it under a forged signature, depositing the sum, just over 15,000 euros, into her personal account before transferring half to Adrian and using the rest to upgrade her car. We sent a separate notice to the bank. It didn't take long for the house of cards to start collapsing. The first call came from my mother. I didn't answer. She tried again and again, sent texts, left voicemails, each more frantic than the last. She went from "we need to talk" to "you're blowing this out of proportion" to "how could you do this to your own mother?" Then came Adrian. His messages weren't apologetic, they were angry. "What's wrong with you, man? You're ruining my life over an apartment you didn't even know existed. I didn't ask her to do this. Don't take it out on me. You're just jealous someone finally treated me like I mattered." That last message hurt more than I expected, dragging up memories of forgotten birthdays, withheld praise, moments when I watched my mother beam at Adrian like he was the second coming while I sat in the background, waiting for my turn. It never came. I stopped waiting. The day Enrique served them in person was when everything shifted. I wasn't there. I didn't need to be. But Val called me after, her voice tight with barely contained anger. She cried, she said she didn't mean to hurt you, that it was all for Adrian's future. But when I asked about the bond, she clammed up. Adrian tried to defend her, but he didn't even know what she'd done until today. "Doesn't matter," I said. "They both benefited. They both can move out." 30 days later, I got the keys. The apartment was empty when I walked in, stripped of furniture, personality, any trace of Adrian's presence. There were some scuffs on the walls, a faint outline where a couch once sat, and a strange smell I couldn't quite place, something between too much cologne and desperation. But it was mine. I stood in the doorway for a long time, letting the silence wrap around me like a second skin. No shouting, no tension, no guilt floating in the air, just a space that had waited quietly, patiently for its rightful owner. Val helped me furnish it. Nothing fancy, just clean, simple pieces. A couch that didn't sink when I sat, a real bed, a small table where I could eat without balancing a plate on my lap. She even brought a plant. "You're an adult now," she said with a smile. "You need something to neglect." I laughed. For the first time in a long time, it didn't feel forced. I didn't hear from my mother for a while after that. I knew the silence was temporary. I braced for it. When she finally showed up, it wasn't at my door. It was at Val's, uninvited. I was there helping Val rearrange her garage when I heard the knock. When I opened the door and saw her standing there, pale and small against the backdrop of a sunny afternoon, my stomach twisted. "Javier," she said softly, "please, can we talk?" I stepped outside and closed the door behind me. "I just want to understand," she said. "Why are you doing this? Why am I doing this?" I repeated. "Mom, you stole from me. You lied for over a year, took what wasn't yours, and gave it away like it was a toy you could rewrap for someone else." "I didn't think you needed it as much as he did," she said. "You've always been the strong one." "No," I said. "I was just quiet. That's not the same." She looked down, hands trembling. "I made a mistake." "You made a choice," I corrected. "Every day for over a year, you chose to lie. And when you had chances to fix it, you doubled down. That's not a mistake. That's betrayal." She looked like she wanted to cry, but the tears didn't come. Maybe even they had given up on her. "I lost you," she whispered. "No," I said. "You threw me away. You just didn't expect me to come back and pick myself up." She tried to hug me. I stepped back. I'm not doing this for revenge, I said. I'm doing this because I deserve better, and maybe if I finally stand up, you'll think twice before doing this to someone else. She didn't respond, just nodded and left. I haven't seen her since. Adrian texted me once after that. Just 2 words, I'm sorry. I didn't reply, I didn't need to. I moved into the apartment the following weekend. Val came with a bottle of kava and we toasted on the small balcony as the sun dipped below the horizon. To new beginnings, she said. To finally being seen, I replied. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel like a side character in my own life. I felt like the protagonist.